when I did finally share about it for the first time on social media, how many women had experienced something so similar. Not just from like boyfriends or husbands or previous exes, like same thing as me. Yeah. And I was like, whoa, that's something to uncover.
Life is all about relationships. Lovers, family, body, or money. How satisfied you are can be completely explained by how you relate to things around you. This is Sophie Jaffe, and together with my husband, Dr. Adi Jaffe, we are here to explore and teach you how to maximize your relationships and achieve a happier life. Let's get ignited.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to this episode of the Ignited Relationship Podcast. I'm Adi Jaffe.
And I'm Sophie Jaffe.
And we're coming to you today just a couple of days before the summer solstice, right?
Yes. This is coming out 3 days before the summer solstice. And we really, this episode with Kate, who's incredible, she is going to really share her heart and soul and a really traumatic early childhood experience that really affected the rest of her life, and it continues to, of course, and the work that she showed up to do over and over again in different ways and different manifestations, peeling away the layers, as we always talk about. So she's going to share, she does a lot of tarot card readings and spiritual work, and she runs the Good Fest. She's just such an incredible human being. And she actually picked a card for all of you. So you'll have to stay tuned for that. But because it's the summer solstice, I wanted to just share a little bit about what that means and some ceremonies and ways that you can connect with the solstice this week and just carve out some time. It's really great to create rituals. If you follow me on Instagram, you know that I'm a big rituals person. We talk every single time about self-care routines and rituals with our guests in the final 5 questions. Rituals help ground you. They help really inspire you to stay on path. And what better time than the summer solstice when we are right here in midsummer, the height of the heat. It's a time that since the beginning of time has been a marker, and that there's been ceremonies and celebration around solstices and equinoxes to honor that connection to the sun, which is the source of our light, of our energy. And this is a time to celebrate the fullness of life and take the time to really raise our energy, to regenerate abundance and truly manifest our dreams. Like, this is a time where, the opposite to this time would be winter solstice. And it's when you're going inward and you're quiet and you're introspective and you're setting intentions. This is the opposite. This is a time where we're celebrating all that we have created, all that we have planted, all that we have sown. And this is a time to figure out how you can properly honor all the beauty that surrounds you. And that can be a lot of different ways of celebrating and showing gratitude for that. One really great way, depending on where you live, is bonfires. Like, look at the fire, have a beautiful celebration, bring out musical instruments, drums, dance, celebrate with your loved ones. And you can even gather some herbs, and if you want it more ritualistic, but whatever's local, just celebrating nature and inviting all your friends and honoring the summer solstice in that way. Another thing is creating a mandala. It's a beautiful pattern you can collect by a bunch of like yellow, orange, colorful flowers and create a pattern, a beautiful, just look up sun mandala, and you can create a beautiful, sacred, healing, amazing pattern, this circular pattern. And kids love doing this. Adults, you can gather all your friends and do a circle and create it together. And these are just really fun ways. Please, love to hear your ideas too, but these are ways that you can honor the summer solstice, which is this week. And really just the idea is to celebrate and carve out some space to celebrate all the beauty that you've created over these last 6 months since the winter solstice.
Amen.
This episode is just so beautiful. We obviously had no idea. I didn't know Kate's story. We've been friends for a bit, and I've gone to a Good Fest the last few years and taught yoga classes. There's something really magical about the Good Fest, and I'm so honored that I've been able to speak in panels and also just to teach and share my craft and hold space for that. And I absolutely love it. Oh yeah, I forgot to, thank you, Adi.
So Sophie took over reviews for today. So I'm just reminding her.
Yeah, I'm going to
because that's how much we love your reviews.
Yeah, we love your reviews. So this is from someone on Instagram DM, and I'm actually not going to say her name just in case for her own privacy.
Totally.
She said, Sophie, I somehow stumbled across your Instagram and now podcast, and I'm so glad that I did. I can relate so much to you and your husband's story, the trauma, the work, and I love what you both said in the episode about your going deep episode, your story, that your partner is someone ultimately that you want to do the work with. I couldn't agree more. I would love to know more about what you are doing for couples, retreats, etc. We are currently seeing a therapist, and I would love to know more about what you offer to other couples that are wanting to grow and develop together. Thanks for being willing and so courageous to share your story. I feel inspired to share more of mine now.
That's awesome. And talking about trauma is so relevant given the episode that we just did with Kate. And we do have an event coming up. So in October, the week of the 21st, we will determine exact dates and hours over here in the next couple of weeks. But there's going to be kind of like a Ignited extravaganza happening over here in LA. So if you love the podcast, one of the best ways to find out more about that is join us on the Ignited VIP, very ignited person group. And not only will you find out more and first about that, tickets will go out for sale there first, as well as swag. Like a lot of you have been asking about the hats and the mugs. That's the only place that those are selling right now. And we'll let you know about that. And there'll be discounted tickets in the Ignited VIP group. And Sophie's going to start going live there again soon. There, I said it. And we're actually really excited. We were just talking before about doing couple-specific half-day retreats within that week. So it's going to be an amazing, amazing experience.
So how do they join the VIP group?
How do they join the VIP group? There's going to be a link below, but there's actually a really easy link that we created, which is just bit.ly/Ignited VIP, all caps. Is that right, Maddie? Maddie is shaking her head yes. So bit.ly/Ignited VIP, all caps. And if you sign up now, you get a month for free.
Awesome.
Which is kind of awesome. So what I love about this episode is this episode kind of bridges our Wednesday and Friday episodes because, this is somebody from your world, yoga, wellness. And we, every once in a while, one of those people shares really deeply about struggles they've had in life. Like we had Melissa Hartwig on here who talked about that. We've had a few people who've gone really deep, just like Kate did today. And I think what's beautiful about it is when you get people who have visibility, that's really when you get the biggest opportunity to teach everybody listening that not only is it okay if your life hasn't been perfect, it's sort of expected that your life hasn't been perfect.
Right.
And that doesn't preclude you from being successful, from, being well, right? I mean, what Kate does now is all around wellness and yoga and movement and teaching other people how to be well. And so it's so beautiful to watch somebody, because in ways we talk about it regularly, we're examples of that as well. But kind of like, okay, like how many times can we just tell our version of the story of it? And so to hear from somebody like Kate was really beautiful.
Yeah, it was a really great episode. I'm so excited for you guys to listen. Stay tuned and remember to share this podcast with your friends. Send them a link to the podcast itself that you love, or just screenshot this and post it on your social media and tag us at ignited.me, at Dr. Adi Jaffe, and at Sophie.Jaffe, and whoever our guest is.
So, and remember, a lot of times we share real actionable. We do a lot of that in this episode.
Yeah.
Real actionable tips. We all know people who need the help.
Yeah.
And so this is such an easy way. I mean, just the way she talked about it, even though we got really sort of quiet and respectful of the experience, the way she talked about it was so empowering.
Absolutely.
And so if you've struggled yourself, you'll get tips from you for your own life. And if you know other people who are struggling and are suffering with depression, anxiety, they've had these sort of traumas in their life, this is such an easy, it's easier than sending them a book to read. It's like, hey, check this episode out. It's really exciting and fun.
Yeah, they can read it in between things as they're running errands. They can put their, headphones in and just walk around the house listening to it while they're doing stuff around the house. Like, it's the greatest gift, and you have no idea how much you may be changing someone's life by sharing it.
Absolutely. So thank you, everybody. See you on the flip side.
We love you all. This episode of the Ignited podcast is brought to you by Philosophy Superfoods. The Philosophy offers cleanses and other nutritional products that are unlike any of the other supplements and detoxification programs on the market. Why? Because they actually nourish the body with whole, live, nutrient-rich foods instead of depriving you and leaving you hungry. Have you ever tried a cleanse only to find out that you can't make it through a whole day because you're starving? Ever try a superfood shake that made you nauseous because it was so disgusting you'd rather not eat? The Philosophy fix all that with a simple set of offerings that load up your body with nutrients while actually tasting good. Makes sense, right? Each of the Philosophy superfood and protein blends is vegan, raw, gluten-free, and has absolutely no filler ingredients. With over 15,000 satisfied customers, including some of the world's biggest celebrities like George Clooney, Gerard Butler, Lea Michele, and over 10 years of experience, this is the best stuff you can get. To buy some or find out more info, go to our website, thephilosophy.com.
All right, everybody. Welcome back to the conversation piece of today. And death. We're gonna start right with death. Kate, what do you got for us?
Ooh, I'm so sorry to bring this type of mood, but when I got settled in, Adi and Sophie asked that I pull a card for the month of June, and the death card came out. So what's really interesting about death is that it's coming up as we gear up for like the halfway mark of the year. And I think when I see the death card, I kind of do I used to be very fearful of it, but now I almost do a little dance, like, awesome, something's ending. There's a rebirth going on, and there's an opportunity for closure, whether I really want to accept that or not.
Absolutely.
So death can be your time to kind of revisit maybe whatever came up in the beginning of the year. And with the sun shining and the mood a little brighter from summer, really accept the transition that's probably already taking place.
I love that.
Isn't it interesting that the death could be the death of something you've been terrified of, actually? And so it's right away we go to our own death, right? The fear of mortality. But it could be the death of something that hasn't been serving you, the death of a struggle you've been going through for the last 3, 4, 5 months. There's so many different ways of looking at it.
It's always a cycle. That the one thing you can trust about death is that there is new life. There is always, like, you'll notice a lot of times in your personal life, if you really pay attention, with every death, there's usually a birth. It's usually that direct.
Exactly. And the tarot in general is completely based on cycles. Like, the whole thing is cyclical. So what's interesting is I got this card so many times, like over and over, because I didn't want to face it when pulling about my previous relationship before moving here. And then I haven't really seen it since. So I'm curious what the next rebirth is.
All right.
Beautiful.
You talked about the cycle, and I can't help it. Was it last night? Sophie and I were walking around, and we were talking about, God, when was it? Was it this morning? I don't even remember. We were talking about how every time, the wallet.
Oh, yeah.
Every time Sophie has this thing that, again, all perspective, right? We keep looking at it as this luck that she has, which is every single time that she lets something go, the answer for it or the reward from it or the lesson becomes really apparent, like super quickly. So we did a podcast episode about losing friends in adulthood, and literally the relationship that she was talking about in that episode rekindled as a kind of a new relationship 2 days later.
After 6 months.
And, she calls in to cancel. She lost her wallet, and
I knew it was here. I knew it was in the house somewhere.
Did this happen with your phone too?
Yep.
Okay.
Sophie loses things.
But do I?
That's true. They come
Is
back.
it lost?
Well, yeah. No, it was 100% lost because we couldn't find it, and it took like a month for us. Eventually, she calls in. So eventually, she goes, "You know what? Screw it. It's lost." She calls in, cancels like 6 credit cards and debit cards, and they all get sent back in. And the next day, she's organizing in the kids' room, and she finds it in a backpack. Or like 2 days later.
Because I fully let it go. I fully released. I was like, it's just stuff. It's just stuff that can be replaced. It's no big deal. There was probably some cash in there. Whoever has the wallet is probably better off.
Yeah.
And that's really my processing.
Yeah. And it was Leo. So
I was just going to say, did the
was,
boys
but,
steal it?
No, they didn't
no,
steal
they
it
didn't
all.
at all. They had no idea
I
that it
left
was
it.
there.
I must have like taken them to an audition. It was deep within a backpack, and we unpacked everything else. But the point being, it is all cycles. And once you can really let something go, and even like if you can, in your life in terms of relationships and bigger things, take some ceremony, take some time to sit and create ritual around letting that thing go.
Honoring it.
Burning it, writing it down and burning it into a fire or, over a sink or something safe outdoors, really, releasing it into earth, releasing it into, the ethers, whatever it is that you believe in.
The universe.
Into the universe. And once you can really let it go, the magic that can come afterwards and the opportunities and the way that things can show up for you really is real. And it's not just, Adi did say this, Sophie believes this to be true for herself. I don't believe it to be true for myself. I believe it to be true for everyone.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Now, in the context of what we're doing here, I think it's really interesting because I call this version of my life like a D 3.0 because it was like the childhood, early years, and then it was my crazy holy shit years, and then this is the phase after that.
Yeah.
And there were probably sub phases. It was like software development. I'm like it's version 3.4 or something like that.
Yeah.
But the same is true for you, right? You've lived how many other versions? How many?
I'd say I'm also on like a 3.4 because I think that that middle space was kind of like almost a disassociated period where it was like the crazy stuff, the childhood, crazy stuff, this, what am I going to do from here to where I am now, where I actually feel like in my power and in my truth. So yeah, I'd say I'm on a similar path.
Awesome. And you talk about it. I mean, you talk about Instagram. We talked about your past. So can we we didn't intro you at all to our people because we just went right for death. But do you want to introduce a little bit kind of what your journey has been like?
For sure. So I'm Kate, for those of you listening. I am currently a yoga instructor, influencer, entrepreneur. But previously in my life, I had overcome a lot of childhood trauma, which led me to take a more, let's say, traditional therapy and treatment route. I suffered from an eating disorder and PTSD, and it kind of defined a large period of my life from a very young age. And then when I developed some more intuitive practices, developed some spirituality, honored my body through food and movement, I felt tremendous relief. So that's what inspired me to create my brand and to get started. And fast forward today, and I'm kind of just trying to live this middle ground of explaining that like our story is where our power lies, and it's where we really find the gifts of it all.
When you say traditional, do you mean like treatment traditional? Like you went to
So I
rehab?
I did about 3 rounds of intensive outpatient treatment. And then in addition to that, I was in like talk therapy from the age of like 8. So I was experiencing panic attacks around that time. And my family, luckily, my parents are super aware of the importance of therapy and have their own mental health struggles. And that is like the greatest gift I had, was their ability to see past any stigma and to not sweep it under the rug. So they saw me panicking and they're like, we have to figure this out. And I didn't share my complete truth of what had happened to me until I was about 17. So it was really hard to really make a lot of progress with therapists. But when I did, and when I committed to it for the first time, I was 19. I was in college, and I went away for 4 months for anorexia. And that was like when it really began. Yeah.
That's a tough leap, I feel like, for people. And a lot of times we blame those who struggle for not being serious about their recovery or not wanting to get down to it. And we don't understand that there's huge amounts of fear because it's kind of like literally the reason I'm running away from this is because it's so scary. I don't want to deal with myself. And now you're telling me that the solution is to deal with it with other people. That sounds insane. No, thank you. And that's number one. And then number two is a lot of the solutions, as you just pointed out, mean isolating, separating yourself from what you know.
Yes.
So yeah, maybe my life sucks a little bit. Like maybe I have panic attacks daily and maybe I can't really meet new people and I sit in my room for hours and maybe I have to drink on top of that or whatever it is that I have to do. Yeah. But I know that reality. Exactly. I know how to operate in this world. And what you're saying to me is I need to go somewhere else with a bunch of people I don't know, I don't trust. I have no idea why they would be better at doing this than I am. I have to go, disappear, trust that something magical is going to happen there that changes literally like who I am, it sounds crazy. And so now you're kind of caught in between a rock and a hard place. You really want things to change, but it's scary to deal with it. And then the solution that's offered is scary by itself.
Exactly. I think for me, it was I completely agree. What I noticed was I had lived for so many years feeling the anxiety and the panic and not feeling like in control of it. So for me, the eating disorder was a way to numb out. So to finally feel numb rather than intense fear and anxiety was like bliss. I didn't know what joy was. I didn't know what presence was, but to just feel nothing felt pretty damn close in comparison. So yeah, that was where my fear really lied, was in having to actually feel again and to release the mechanisms, the coping mechanisms that I had developed. So what happened, a lot of it had to do with my age too. Being as young as I was, I came home for like a break. I was in Arizona and I came home and my dad was crying and he's like, you have to go to treatment. Like there's really no choice. It's either that or you come home or you stay.
Why? What were the signals? How did he know?
Like my hair was falling out. I just looked sick. And being an only child I will admit, my family and I are fairly codependent, which has a lot to do with, the way that.
But also understandably.
Understandably, true. Yeah. Thank you. They just knew from looking at me, like immediately, that something was wrong, just like they had in the past when they saw me feeling, overwhelmed. So it was kind of like a non-negotiable. And I think for the first 2 months, I had lived my entire teen years like so angry, so angsty, like anger and rage was like my go-to.
Oh, I know that place.
It's a fun place.
That was fun, man.
And I hated it because I didn't want to be that way. Sorry, I'll stay closer. But I also felt like this, again, is easier than sadness or what I really have to face, which is what I'm holding inside. And
what were you listening to? What were you doing in the middle of that? Like, because that angst place, you can get really comfortable with surrounding yourself with depression and anger and fear and.
Well, I used it as like a badge of honor and like an armor, really.
Yeah.
I did a lot I enjoyed, so when the trauma that I experienced was around the ages of 3 and 4. And when my father and my mother divorced, my mom had to go back to work and nursing school and was just trying to provide and do her best. And unfortunately, a caretaker, a woman came into our life, and I was sexually abused for those years. And I didn't know what the fuck was happening to me. I was 4 years old, and I had no understanding of my body anymore. I had no connection to my body. I felt like at any point someone could intrude. So my defense was to manipulate everyone else. And I became the puppeteer. So I was like the mean girl with the girls. I always had, I was very seeking a lot of validation from men and always having a few of them and lying. I enjoyed that. It was like, this is how I can thrive now, is if I become that puppeteer and I take the reins.
Yeah.
Ooh, wow. Yeah. And especially at that age, like, for anyone, but especially for a female, I feel like for anyone and holding space for that. But as a female in this society, like to be violated in that way, was it by the caretaker or by someone else while she was in?
Caretaker.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was a lot. And it's something that it's taken a long time to I don't even know if fully process is the word, but I definitely understood then, like, oh, this is why anorexia felt safe.
Right.
Because it was like, oh, this is my body. I can claim it again.
Controlling
I can control
it.
the way it looks. I can control what goes into it. Yeah, it all makes a lot more sense.
And how did it come out? Did you know, were you aware that it was happening? Do you remember it? Or do you,
I do.
You do?
I remember like glimpses of things.
Okay.
Yeah.
And did you go to your mom and dad, or what did you do?
I did when I was like 17. And
Not until then.
so I held it. So I remember like I was like 8 or 9 and I would go to the school nurse, and you guys have kids, like what it's like. And they'd call my parents every day. And so they're like, Kate's here again. And I realized now, like, the triggers I had, for example, a movie theater. What kid doesn't love a movie theater? I hated it because I felt like there was this unimplied, like, you can't leave. Like you're not
trapped.
supposed to get, you're trapped. Classroom, same thing. If we were like all playing and being collaborative, I was fine. But if the teacher was lecturing us, I felt very uncomfortable with that. And then, so those kind of things were coming up, and the school nurse would call my mom and say, like, she keeps saying she can't swallow. And I was like, that's my throat chakra. Like now looking back, I'm like, there was truth there that I wasn't saying. But I remember telling my parents first, and then I told my very best friend at the time, and she just started bawling. And I, being kind of like, again, the angsty, angry one, was like, why are you crying? And
Right.
she
Still
was,
protection.
yeah. And she was so sad and hurt for me. And I think that was the first time I felt like truly validated for like the severity of what had gone on. And that was a lot too, to kind of process. But
Sure.
Wow.
Yeah, I think I can just imagine the 14-year gap, right, between those two spaces, especially if you remember the whole time. Because a lot of people say that they don't remember a lot of those things.
I don't think I did the whole time. I think around like that 8 or 9, when it started to like the anxiety came through, is when maybe I started to feel something wasn't safe.
Got it.
Yeah.
And then I love you mentioned that your parents paid attention. I know we talked about this just a little bit ago, Soph, and we notice it with Kai or Leo with, when they get rashes or when their body is reacting to something and it's obvious anxiety or something along those stress.
Clenching their teeth. Yeah.
Because I remember like
Appetite changes or something. Yeah.
when I was a kid in elementary school, I would go home sometimes and my stomach would hurt so much
You
that I would
just
double
remembered
over.
this the other day.
Yeah, and it was a big thing. I want to ask my mom when we're in Tel Aviv if she remembers this, but 3 times a month or something, I would go back home, but like doubled over. I wouldn't be able to stand up and my stomach would be in knots. Almost I imagine for an adult, it's like what an ulcer feels like. But I was like 8. But nobody ever questioned it. Like nobody ever, and why would an 8-year-old have that kind of stomach pain? So it's really interesting because now I remember being socially anxious all the time and never feeling.
So it was anxiety.
100%. But nobody brought it up. And as a kid, you don't know to think that it's anything other than the physical manifestation of what's happening.
I think it's interesting also that for you, Adi, the story that you've told to me and probably to yourself for a really long time is that your anxieties, acting out, all the things that happened later in life, you kind of blame it all on moving to the States and away from Israel and everything that you knew.
No, that's not true.
No?
No,
The only time I've heard you talk about any anxieties, it started when...
No, I talk about, at least in the story I talked to about people about my addiction, I was like 7 or 8. Remember I told you that story about the mirror? Like I remember standing in front of a mirror when I was like 8 and saying, it's so insane for me to think of Kai in this age right now, thinking that, but like literally thinking that like in a vain way, like my physical being wasn't enough. Like it wasn't good looking enough or it wasn't gonna like get me through. I don't even know where that came from. I have no idea where it came from. But like that I was gonna have to come up with something else. Like there was gonna have to be something else that made me special.
Jesus.
And I don't know why. I just remember the moment. And then there was a lot of awareness of not fitting in the way I in my head wanted to fit in.
Yeah.
Nobody else apparently had a sense of it.
Yeah.
Everybody else felt like, and by everybody I mean like the friends I still speak to and my parents, etc., my sister. From their perspective, none of that happened. But I carried it for years. When I was 14, what happened was I got transplanted into a place where now I really did stick out. So that made it doubly as difficult because I didn't speak the language as well as everybody else. I was the new kid in high school and, everybody knows each other. So it was kind of, it made it harder to ignore. But no, it had been there since I was 8, at least that I know. So that's why I was connecting with the time frame.
Yeah.
So food control became a big thing for you.
Food control.
Do you remember what made it okay to talk about it at 17? Like what happened at 17 that you were able to say something?
That's interesting. I don't know the trauma you mean? Like telling my...
Confessing it to someone. Because there's a shame with talking about it. What made you cross that bridge?
I remember that the night it happened and that I shared, it was very late. I think I literally just couldn't fall asleep, and it reached a point where I just couldn't take it anymore. And at the time, my mom had been going through a lot with addiction as well, and just, as her story is hers, I won't go too into it, but I walked into her room and told her, and I don't think it was the right time, and I think in a weird way, I wanted to say it, but I didn't want to deal with it, and I knew that she wasn't in a place to deal with it, so I was like, perfect. Yeah. I'll tell her now, so I can say I said so, but also, like, it's 2 a.m. and she's not
going to be able to receive it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So then when it came up again in treatment, that was kind of like the first time my parents really heard, was like, because I had kind of even manipulated that to be in my favor.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
Isn't it funny how the language is still there? Like in your head, you manipulated it, even though the way I see it is like you cracked the window open,
True.
right? Like you'd been alone at home in this fear for a decade, a little over a decade. And still the expectation is, even with the damage, even with the pain that was inflicted on us, even with to me, the first thing I hear about a caretaker abused me is trust is demolished.
Done. Yeah.
Gone.
It's gone.
Because, this is what happens when parents beat you, when parents abuse you sexually or psychologically. It's like, you were the person who I was supposed to trust more than anybody else in the world. Like if somebody on the outside inflicts pain, I start not trusting people.
Yeah.
But if I can't trust the person tasked with taking care of me, who the fuck, where do I go?
Turn to? Yeah.
It
is.
I have to be alone. That's the only way to support. That's why you started, the way I kind of see it is, that's why you started trying to control everybody else as well as yourself, because there is, the best friend could be the next person that fucks you over. So there's nowhere to turn.
And those who are abused can take on characteristics of the abuser in some way. It doesn't always have to manifest in the same thing that you did, but it is interesting how that happens and how you start to take that on. I think too, what's interesting to me is like, as a caretaker, unrelated to me, but still, yes, there was this level of trust there and understanding the power play and the authority that is working too is fascinating. And looking back at it, it just I almost want to ask not only her, but anyone who does this, what is it about that? You know what I mean? It's so much more than just the sexual act or the physical. If it's abuse physically, it's it's the power, the manipulation. And I think what brings me, or used to bring me, the most shame was I can almost remember almost wanting that to happen when she would come over. Yeah. Because it was like a game. Yeah. And I was like, oh, this is what we do. This is, I'm taught now that this is how we play. Yeah. And that just makes my stomach turn, because what's also fascinating is when I did finally share about it for the first time on social media, how many women had experienced something so similar. Not just from boyfriends or husbands or previous exes, same thing as me. Yeah. And I was like, whoa, that's something to uncover.
And something to be aware of, for parents.
Absolutely.
Was this person an adult, a teen?
I would say 18 or 19.
Okay.
Yeah.
Did you confront her? Mm-mm. Okay. And that was never a thing?
Mind you, I think it could have been a thing. It was definitely an option for me. When a lot of this came out, the full severity and the full scope, I was in treatment for my eating disorder. So they kind of suggested that maybe not the time when I'm in such a fragile state. And I don't know when and if I'll be ready for that. But I think me doing things like this and totally normalizing the stigma around it and 100%. The fact that it happened is step one. And maybe a part of me is maybe she's out there listening. I don't know. Yeah. I think the thing that pisses me off most is knowing that it didn't just happen to me. There's no way. Right. It was too it was too tactfully done. So. And
that happened over years, it sounds like.
Yeah, probably about a year. Yeah. But anyway, on that note.
Well, so, look, we talked about death was the thing we opened up with, right? And this was a version of you, like you said, right? A version of you that went through the abuse and then kind of dealt with it in your own way. And then there was the rebellious phase of pushing back against it. Yeah. When do you feel, or is it a point in time? Is it an experience where things started turning for you?
Things started turning for me when I decided. So I went through college after treatment in recovery. And I say that in air quotes because I was doing the things I was meant to do. I was not over-exercising. I was eating. I was following my meal plans.
Checking things off
the box.
The boxes.
Exactly. Yeah. I was doing what I was supposed to be doing. And I had to do that. That was maintenance. I think step 2 for me for recovery was I call it recovery of the body and then the mind, because it was the conscious choice to actually give up those things. So I think there was a period of time where I was well, God forbid I gain too much weight, or God forbid something happens, I can always go back. And it was around 22 that I decided, no, this is a forever thing. I graduated, I moved home, I was in a relationship and still lying, still cheating. I was doing a lot. And that came out. And for the first time, rather than just writing me off, my ex looked at me and was like, why? Why are you cheating? What's the problem? And I just broke down and I was like, I am at war with my own thoughts all the time. Like, I don't know how else to handle this. And then I decided to do the work that I think I had avoided. And by think I know is the trauma work. So my second round of treatment was another 3 months in an intensive outpatient setting for all women, for like women's trauma. And that was when like the healing really started, because it wasn't just the eating disorder, it was everything. It was the full scope of the story. And
Well, the eating disorder was the first layer.
Yes.
That was a manifestation of the deep trauma.
Exactly. So
This sounds familiar. This
What?
point that like putting yourself in a place where you're controlling the identified problem, the eating disorder. From the outside, it looks a little bit like life is back on track. But that's just because all everybody was paying attention to was the identified problem. Like your hair's not falling out anymore, therefore you must be okay.
her period's back. She eats again. She's good.
Yeah, she hit this number on the scale, so she's good.
Exactly. And yeah, so I went to this treatment and it was based in like dialectical behavioral therapy. So very mindfulness based, and there were tools. So I had talked about my story a million times. I'd gone in therapy rooms and told them, and I got that look of like, oh wow, that's really, really dark, you know? And I was like, okay, but what can I do now? Like, give me something.
Yeah.
And that was where like I discovered yoga for the first time and learned what it meant to meditate. And it was funny because we look on Instagram and it's like so fancy, and we have our crystals and our sage and it's beautiful. But for me, it was like in a very like kind of sad and sterile room that I learned these practices from the get-go, and also with a group and a mix of women that were like so diverse and all over the place, and stories were so different, and all of us were new to it, and we were all like, okay, if you tell me this is going to work, I'll give it a shot.
Oh, interesting. I love it. The tools, I talk about this a lot in the work, is you have to be ready to use the tools before they'll do anything anyway. Like, we all know meditation works.
Yeah.
A couple of thousand years.
Yeah.
There's been a few millions of people who've tried it out. It's not a
studies.
question of whether meditation does anything or not. But if you get somebody who's not ready to meditate, or somebody who doesn't understand why they're meditating and what the point is, it'll do the opposite. It'll cause them anxiety. It'll push them towards panic. And so a lot of times, I feel like, yeah, maybe the telling of the stories felt like it didn't serve a purpose in terms of fixing things. But I think it allowed you to land in a place where you could deal with it. Whereas when you couldn't even talk about it or come to terms with the experience, we still want to run away from it all the time. Like, you want, a lot of people that I talk to, they want to meditate so that they don't have bad thoughts about their past anymore. It's like, that's not really what meditation does. Actually, meditation brings more awareness to how you feel and how you're doing. So you better be prepared
To reprocess.
for like full, it's like a 75-inch screen right in front of your face, full HD. Here's your life.
From every single angle.
Yeah, truly.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you better be ready and willing. And as you were talking, I kept thinking about our whole radical transparency thing, because you were talking about your boyfriend and why are you doing this and that, the other thing. And I think for a lot of people, running back into your head is sometimes easier, or at least it feels easier. It, especially for those of us, and I think almost all of us, especially people listening right now, have had traumatic experiences of some sort. Maybe like mini trauma, so they're not full-blown traumatic experiences, but inside can feel safe. And so, when you do something you're not 100% proud of, or like, the conversation we had this morning about our weird dreams or whatever, you don't always want to turn to your partner and say, hey, this really strange reality came up in my head yesterday. You might think I'm crazy just by telling you this. So a lot of people just internalize it.
Yeah.
And they go, there's crazy parts of me. I don't really share those with other people.
No, but energetically, that something is created.
Totally. And it sticks there.
Hidden.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's interesting too, when I was talking to him and when he asked me like, what's going on, so many times I'd been faced with that before, where someone kind of called me on my shit, and I was like, blame.
Yeah. Or defensive.
Defend yourself and get out. And with him, I was like, the common denominator really seems to be me.
Wow.
So when am I going to, and that was the first time I did. And thank goodness, because I didn't even realize what guilt can feel like, when you're carrying it that long, even if it's, smaller things. And I'm talking like when you're 19, 21 in college and like lying to a boyfriend, I mean, yes, it's not right, but was it my soulmate? No, it's fine.
Right.
It's going to be okay.
Right.
We're all going to survive. But that knowing that you're keeping lies in and holding that guilt is so much more exhausting until you put it down and realize how light it is.
Absolutely. And just patterns that you keep repeating. Like at some point you're going to have to face it. Like, no, is it a big deal to like tell white lies when you're 19? No. Is it a big deal when you're 22 and you, no, but it adds up. And at a certain point, something, when you realize that you are the common denominator and you are and once you have the awareness of something that you're doing in a pattern that you're repeating and that it's hurting you building real relationships and growing as a human being, that's when like you can't go back from that. Because that is like
you wake up to it.
Exactly.
Like,
once you're awake, you can't go back to sleep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
That's the problem isn't even the other person, I don't think. It's just that you're not living your authentic self. So it is a big deal.
Of
Because
course.
wouldn't it be nice at 19 to just be
who you
true
are.
to whoever you are? Like that's the thing. I think a lot of us, and this is important, a lot of us want to be a certain person. So we keep pretending to be that certain person. And when you're 17, it's a specific, I don't know, it's the most popular guy or girl in your school is who you want. Or maybe there's like a celebrity you want to be like, or whatever that is. And then you grow up a little bit more and that changes maybe. You know, maybe some of the characteristics stay the same, but the name of the person changes or how they look or whatever that is. And we keep pretending that if we get to be like that person, like for a guy, I don't know, if I get the six pack and my abs are strong and my biceps are really big and I have that car, then I'll be at the place where I want to get. And so we keep pretending. We just live in this life where we're constantly pretending. As soon as you flip it and you go, oh, hold on. There's these thoughts in my head and feelings that I have. And if I'm more authentically living by those guides, I just kind of enjoy my day more.
Yeah.
I end up in relationships that I appreciate more. I have an easier time than being honest with my boyfriend or girlfriend because they got together with me, not this pretend magical fantasy version that I created of myself. And so
everything works better too. Like you just sleep better.
Totally.
Everything is more fulfilling.
I mean, it's no
easier.
coincidence that my career completely changed when I finally and by completely changed, I mean I had the courage to go after what I wanted to do.
Of course.
You know?
Yeah. Everything falls
Flows
into
to.
place. Like I don't spend any time thinking about like, oh, should I say that?
Yeah.
Should I say that thing? Oh, that secret life I had. Like, what was the lie that I need to remember? Where was I last night? Who did I text? Oh, I need to delete that thing.
Yeah.
Like the amount of energy. I was with a friend who's no longer a friend a couple years ago, and we were out eating, and I feel like he was on his phone or something, and I just grabbed it, like just playing around, and as if I was going to go like grab something, and his face turned beet red. Just this response and reaction that I'm not aware of in my reality very much anymore at all. When I say very much, not at all. I have no one in my life that's secretive like that. And he has so many layers of lies and secrets and hiding that me even holding his phone triggered him beyond, even though there's nothing in there about me. It's not about me. It's his own secrets and lies. And I flashed back immediately to a D&I when he was cheating on me. I flipped back to my ex-boyfriend when he used to cheat on me and lie and do drugs and all the things. And it was like, whoa, into this other reality for a minute. And that was one of the many reasons that I couldn't be his friend anymore is because I can't have that behavior and those types of people in my life that aren't showing up, living radically transparently with each other, with me, with themselves, most importantly, with themselves. Like, if you're going to be in my home and be around my children and be in my work environment, you're going to have to earn it and be the best version of who you are and show up. And that means we still make mistakes all the time. We're making mistakes, but we call each other on it and we want each other to be the best versions of who we are. And that is not going to be tolerated like at all because I want better for him and for people like that. I want him to live authentically.
Totally. It's hard when you go through those phases of like, whether it's overcoming addiction or in my case, recovery, like looking back, there were some women who I really connected with at the time and who I was like, oh, these are going to be my friends for life. And it doesn't serve, we were not meant to be friends kind
Beyond
of past
that.
that group and that time.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the sacredness of it was there was like that privacy and we came and we were ourselves and we were processing together. But like, there's a new transition now and it's okay.
And that's the beauty of so many experiences and opening yourself up to new experiences. I know you lead retreats. I've been leading retreats for a decade now. Adi and I do couples work together. And these kind of workshops, events, you know, the Good Fest, amazing event that you created. Every Good Fest I've been to has blown me away, like above and beyond any other event. And because it's curated, because wherever you go, there you are. And because these types of workshops that Adi and I co-create and I co-create with other women, everyone shows up exactly as they are. And you drop in immediately. And you are attracted to that to begin with. Like, listen to those little signs when the universe, when you see a retreat, for example, and you're like, there's something about that, and you screenshot it. There's something about that pull. Follow that instinct, follow that intuition, because there is something about that trip that will heal you, provide space for whatever it is, connection that you can't create in any other place, in any other world.
Yeah.
So, Kate, what to get you to this place now, what are some of the, you talked about DBT and meditation and mindfulness. For people who are struggling, what are some of the other tools? What are some of the kind of steps that you've taken to get to this place now? And any techniques, any experiences that were particularly powerful?
Yeah. So mine were definitely the meditation and yoga. It allowed me to feel, I was still struggling a little bit with body dysmorphia. So I felt like yoga really allowed me to feel in my body. But that said, it's not everyone's thing. So I think there's something about, I mean, trauma and experiences like the ones I had, or even if you just had kind of repeated, continued messages that you weren't worthy, I think anything that allows you to feel joy and to feel almost like childlike again is so healing. I think that's step one. Go back and like reprocess and reestablish that.
And what did you do that allowed you to do that?
For me, it was like movement, dance, creativity, just to kind of like the things that I loved as a little girl, but I kind of like dimmed my light. You know, I remember that. I remember just like always kind of like wanting to be smaller. So going back and allowing myself to enjoy that and to like fully laugh, fully be. I think that's step one. And a lot of that takes like really supportive friends, family, partners who make you feel comfortable enough too. So that's why support systems are so important. I think not only, depending on the level of trauma and the severity of what's been going on, and also like the whatever diagnoses are coming up, I think it's really important that people understand and are accepting of the fact that yes, we can hit up Instagram and find women like Sophie and myself who inspire us. But we need to also hit up people like you, Adi, and others and do like a little more work in relation to like the therapy and the processing. I like to be very transparent that I wouldn't be where I am today, feeling successful, feeling like in my power, in my truth, if I hadn't done the stuff that doesn't look fun and doesn't look glamorous and cute. So yeah, I think that's also a huge thing. I mean, the meditation is interesting too, because I think it allows you to go back and to reprocess and reevaluate a lot of things. I think writing is so transformative. I think writing letters is one of the things I did, probably countless letters to my body, to my abuser, to my shame, anything, people, places, things I wrote letters to and burned the shit out of them. And I think if your thing is anger, lean into that a little bit in a safe way. If it's lighting something on fire, who tells you can't? Why? Because it's not feminine enough?
Punching things.
Yeah.
Safe, creating a space, going to boxing classes regularly.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So. Again, like Sophie was saying, lean into that intuition, right? Give yourself what you need instead of listening to those critical external voices that have been there for so long, telling you, well, no, that's girls don't punch things. Girls, you gotta find a way to deal with this that looks really graceful on the outside.
Yeah.
Absolutely not. It's going to be messy. It's not going to be pretty. And that is the point. I mean, some of the deepest work that we've done is not pretty. It's nothing that I would want videotaped and shared, but it's also necessary. Yeah. The only way out is through. And it's some of that throughness is yucky.
Yeah, for sure.
So as it currently stands, we got the Good Fest. You pull out cards, sometimes not death.
Yeah, no, I pull out positive cards too.
I mean, again, it doesn't have to be negative.
That's so me though. I always say that.
It's got such an interesting, like, just the picture. It's like a dead crow, essentially.
Yeah.
It's
just like a...
I mean, if you're going to go morbid, you got to go all the way. I feel like.
We're going quite literal.
And what else are kind of the big things that you've got going on right now?
Big things I have going on. So I just wrapped up a retreat, but have another coming up in November. That one's about conscious business building as well. So it's really about developing, whether it's your career full time or just something that it further enriches your life. So that will be in Costa Rica. And then I do mentorships for women. So I do one-on-one. I worked with a mentor after my yoga teacher training and found it to be so transformative. And it really allowed me to find my voice as a teacher and in what I wanted to share. So I do that. Most of them end up being a little bit more business related, which is interesting. But others are more just personal development and developing intuitive practices and tapping into whatever that is. So that's a lot of the work I've been focusing on lately and trying to ramp up more of. And I thought about doing like the online course and the this and the that, but I really like working one-on-one.
Yeah.
And I think I just need to listen to that. If that's what I enjoy doing, then
Absolutely.
that's how I'm going to make that impact.
And different phases in our lives, like in 2 years from now, or maybe when you have a baby, or there's all different phases, and just honoring that. And I think a lot of times as businesswomen and entrepreneurs, business people and entrepreneurs, I think we want to have the answers, and you don't need to have the answers. It can just feel good right now, and you can change. The cool thing is you can change whenever you want to, and you can decide to do something differently and take a different path whenever you want to, because you're still you and you're still offering your mini gifts to the world. And it's okay to change your mind. You don't have to keep doing the same thing. That's not the way that our society is built anymore. We have co-created a beautiful shift where we all can work from wherever we want to work from. The world of social media, the world of the internet, the world of laptops and phones, you can be everywhere and you can be nowhere, and you can do whatever you want to do that brings you joy. And that's so beautiful.
It's so empowering too. I mean, we take the same philosophy with GoodFest too. Like we used to really force what like our next plan was and next move. And because there's plenty of events, there's plenty of things going on. So if it's flowing to us with ease and a date makes sense and a venue makes sense, like it happens.
Yep.
And we just kind of like released that. And the outcome was exactly the same. The money was the same. The attendees still, like nothing changed.
Yep.
Besides my, internal fire was
stress,
changed.
right?
Yeah.
Totally. Yeah. So many of us try to force a lot. I'm talking to myself right now.
At least he knows it.
Yeah, totally. Knowledge. It's the first step to everything. So we got 5 questions.
Yep.
We ask everybody. You ready?
Yep.
Question number 1.
Yes.
What is the best advice you've ever received?
Ooh, gosh, that's hard. I always think about my dad with this question, and it's not super deep, but he's someone, blue collar worker, has been working his whole life, and he's like, Kate, whatever you do, love what you do. He's like, I don't give a shit what you do. He never cared what I did, but he was just like, I just want you to love it. And that really showed up a lot. And because of everything I had gone through, I always struggled a lot in school academically. It was not getting great grades, and my parents were like they weren't worried. So I think that has a lot to do with it.
Same family. We came from the same family. Number 2, what has been your proudest moment to date?
Proudest moment to date was the first GoodFest. I think it was my proudest moment. Yeah.
When was that?
April 2017. And I looked out and there were 350 women in Philly, my hometown and home city. And yeah, I just was like, shit, I did it. And just a year prior to that, I had been like really struggling. So I was like, all right, I can do this.
That's amazing.
You're on the right path.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
for sure.
So on the flip side to that, your hardest moment?
Ooh, hardest moment. I think in treatment for my eating disorder, I was on the couch and there was definitely like a pivotal moment when my therapist asked me like, why hold on? Why continue to hold this? And I said very, very confidently, this is the only thing I'm good at. I remember that.
Sounds like a turning point.
It was, because then I went home and I was like, is that true?
Is that true?
Yeah. I was like, that feels really definitive for like a 19-year-old.
Yeah.
So I was like, there's no way. It can't be possible. And so much of a lot of the people in the group were expanders for me, because many women, and I had so much compassion for them, had been struggling for decades.
Yeah.
And I was a few years in, and it was really hard to rewire and reprogram those like automatic, almost compulsions to restrict my food, et cetera. But they were like going on 20, 30, 40 years of this behavior. And I was like, I have a choice.
Yeah.
I do.
Some of the greatest healing that Adi and I have done for me personally was doing groups, like when it came to either sex addiction or cheating, was going to groups where I heard other females and other males in the relationship, husbands and wives, talking about their problems and their issues and just hearing it differently, hearing things from other perspectives, seeing myself in them, seeing them in myself, and then also seeing like that's not what I want to be in 20 years.
Yeah.
Okay, you talked about things that you've been able to do to take care of yourself and how you work in GoodFest to reduce stress in the process, etc. A lot of the people we talk to have self-care rituals, things that you make sure you take care of regularly so that you can show up as your best self. What's your self-care ritual?
So I used to answer pulling cards or journaling or something like that. And I hope you guys don't laugh at this, but asking for hugs.
I love that.
Yeah, I've been really a lot more affectionate with people, even just friends, or romantic or with family, like just asking for more physical touch that feels really loving and accepting it.
Again, I can't help but imagine that coming from where you came from, that was for a long time the last thing you wanted. Like, don't touch me.
Yeah. Unless it was me like initiating and having some kind of like power over it.
Sure.
Yeah.
Wow. Thank you.
Last but not least, this podcast is called Ignited. What ignites you?
Seeing other women speak their truth and speak up for themselves and to make a conscious choice not to be defined by what's happened to them.
Thank you.
You're so welcome. Thank
I
you
love
guys.
it. Yeah. Thank you for sharing your truth. We are big believers in the power of doing that. You know, every time we do it, there's dozens of people who we've now given permission to live their own truth because they went, well, if Kate can do it and get where she has, then maybe I have a chance. So thank you for sharing
Thank
that.
you for sharing your story.
Thank you guys. That's the hope.
Yeah. And thank you everybody for paying attention.
Check out GoodFest.
Yeah, we'll have links to all of Kate's stuff.
I highly encourage you to get in the car and drive to wherever the next one is.
Cool.
I love you.
Magical.
Love you. See you all next week.
Bye.
Thank you, everybody, for listening to the Ignited podcast. We were so happy to have you along for this ride. Please go and subscribe to this. Leave us a review. We love hearing from you. And if you want more, don't forget to go to ignited.com, where all the podcast episodes are available with show notes and so many of the little details and links from each one of these interviews. And you can look at all the future events that we have going on, all the things that make Ignited so special, even beyond this recording. Again, thank you so much for joining us. We will see you next week.